To my people over here.
To my people over there.
To my people
My people everywhere.
watching this show.
Paying top dollar because they know.
When we're on the stage, we're in an application essay rage. Hey, everybody. Welcome to application essay lesson number 2, the deuce. This is a follow-up to Miss Sinat's first lesson about identity. We're going to take it a little different direction, so follow along. So, to pick up where Miss Sinat left off, she showed you a timeline, and that's a very linear way of generating ideas. I'm going to show you something a little different called a bubble map or web. And as you can see in front of you, you just draw different bubbles on the page with the idea, the central idea in the middle of that which you're brainstorming about. In this case, it's my obstacles, setbacks, or failures. The first thing that immediately comes to my mind when I think about major setbacks was a time when I was in college, my sophomore year of college, and I sustained a football injury playing college football, and it changed my life forever. It made me question everything I was about because I had played football since I was 7 years old, and I thought that's all that I wanted to do. But it really kind of showed me something. It showed me that it's never too late to transform your life and become someone different. And that was the first major setback that really kind of challenged me in life. Another challenge in my life was one time when I was in middle school, going back to the 7th grade, I got into with a group of kids who, I guess for lack of a better term, you'd consider the cool kids. They weren't necessarily friends with some of my other friends that I'd known for a long time, but they were doing this talent show and they wanted me to be part of it. We were called the Hawaiian Stickers. We put these fake paper flames on top of sticks and threw them across the stage and during the talent show, and it was a huge challenge getting up and performing this in front of a packed house at Eckstein Middle School. But it made me also think about the people that I was hanging out with and who they were and how that reflected on who I was. Perhaps the lowest of all the obstacles in my life was when my grandfather passed away. He died at sea actually on a tugboat coming back from Alaska, and I was only in the 8th grade at the time. And it obviously had a tremendous impact on my life. We were buddies, and he showed me how to cook and do other things. Anyway, the bigger part of that though was years later, I found out that he wasn't my biological grandfather, which really had an upsetting effect on me because of the fact that he was part Native American, and I had always considered myself part Native American. And so to find that out made me think too about like who I was, what my true identity was, and is it enough to believe you are something, or is it in your DNA? And finally, as I was generating ideas throughout my life, I came upon the one that was probably the biggest barrier linguistically and culturally, which was living abroad in Colombia. And there, the Spanish language and the cultural differences were just enormous. And I found myself again kind of questioning who I was. Who was I? What was I doing there? I was teaching for the first time in my life to a packed crowd at an all-girls Catholic school with classes of up to 50 students, if you can imagine that. Feels like Mercer a little bit, right? So anyway, it caused me to realize something though super important as well, which is that I could be multiple things. Going back over all my obstacles, I realized that they all kind of showed me the light to this on this path of, you're not necessarily nailed down to one thing in life, but you can be multiple things at once. And now once again you can see my bubble map in its entirety, and you can see all the different ideas that I generated from 7th grade to college to 8th grade to living abroad in Bogota, Colombia. You can see how they all kind of fit together, but I also did something else, which was I took an extra little step by kind of reflecting on what those life lessons were about each of those experiences, and I kind of wrote those outside of the bubble. Might want to try that as well to see what kind of things you got, the takeaways you had from those different experiences. To my people over here.
To my people over there.
To my people.
My people everywhere.
Watching this show.
Paying top dollar because they know.
When we're on the stage, we're in an application essay rage. Hey everybody, welcome to application essay lesson number 2, the deuce. This is a follow-up to Miss Sinat's first lesson about identity. We're going to take it a little different direction, so follow along. Who I believed I was, with knowing that Native American DNA was not part of my physiology. Was I who I believed I was, or what science told me? Another obstacle that crushed my youthful dreams was when in my second year of college football, I sustained a serious back injury that sidelined my football ambition. Who could I be without football? It was all I ever dreamed about since I was 7 years old. Still, this life-changing injury made me realize I could transform my life and become someone different. As part of my transformation, I found myself living and teaching at an all-girls Catholic school in Bogota, Colombia, in South America. What seemed like an adventure was perhaps my biggest challenge ever. How could I teach having never taught before? What was I doing with my life? And would I ever learn Spanish? I settled in and gritted my teeth and persevered. I eventually learned how to teach and how to speak Spanish. Claro que sí. But most importantly, I found that I could connect with people who were different from myself. I learned this only because I had finally learned more about who I was as a human being. Each obstacle challenged me to question my inner self and figure out who I was. I'm still not all the way there yet, but I'm evolving. And now I'd like to introduce a very special guest, Mija, my daughter, Viola, who's going to share a little bit about yet another strategy for generating brainstorming ideas around overcoming obstacles. Viola, take it away.
Thank you. And I will be showing you another way of generating ideas, and this is a way that I used a lot actually in middle school and throughout high school, which is using a list. So what I did for this example of overcoming obstacles, I thought of a couple of ideas and I laid them out 1, 2, 3, 4. And the first one I did was getting a concussion in softball. So this was my main idea for what I was going to write about. From there, I would think of examples from that and just start writing them down. So I said some of the obstacles that I faced during that was having to take the SAT and the AP tests. I also wrote that I had a lot of headaches all the time and I wasn't able to play softball. So I was just starting to write ideas from the main idea of getting a concussion. And then for my second idea for one of the obstacles was getting arguments with your best friends, and then again I would just write underneath it the first thing that would come to my mind. So not talking with them often, being upset with them, and trying to find a solution. So I would again just continue all the thoughts that came to me with that idea, and then I would just continue on, and then from there I would decide which topic I would pick for my essay. Continuing on with the ideas that we were talking about earlier about obstacles, I'm going to be reading an actual application essay that I submitted 2 years ago for college, and the topic for this essay was obstacles and challenges. So I'm going to be reading this to you all. I have had many challenges throughout my high school career that I have been able to overcome. One of the most recent challenges I have experienced happened last spring. During my junior year, I was hit in the head with a wild softball pitch, causing me to have a severe concussion during the major SAT and AP testing window. This was a challenging experience because when you have a concussion, your mind doesn't function properly. Things don't seem as clear as they usually do. Ideas and concepts you studied in school aren't processed the same way in your brain as they were before the concussion. For example, having a concussion and trying to remember something you studied is like looking at a foggy mirror. You can almost see a reflection, but none of the details. After my concussion, trying to learn was physically painful because memorization hurt my head. 1 week after suffering the concussion, I had to take an AP test. I was anxious about testing because of the symptoms I was feeling, and I didn't want all the endless hours of previous studying to go to waste. I took my first AP test, but during the test I felt like my brain was going to explode. I was utterly devastated because I had studied so much and I knew the subject very well. I would read a sentence and couldn't understand a single word I read. I went to the doctor and she told me I shouldn't take any more tests after that AP test since it put too much stress on my brain. Given that I am the type of person who pushes herself to do the best and make an attempt no matter the level of difficulty, this was frustrating news, even if it is hard. Having someone tell me that I wasn't allowed to participate made me feel defeated. In the end, it was a fierce challenge I had to battle. I had to take things slow and not rush the process. I was taking 3 AP courses at the time, and I was unable to take or retake any of the tests. I lost my testing window opportunity. I had to make a choice, my health or the test. Unfortunately, I was unable to reach my full academic and testing potential, and my SAT scores reflect this. Thinking back on this event, I've realized that this situation could help me in the future. I learned a valuable life lesson, which is that success takes time. Being patient is preferable to rushing through the process. By rushing head on into things, I wasn't letting myself heal properly. From this experience, I have become more aware of the consequences of my actions, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain my experience to you all.
So to wrap up, I put here, as you can see, the different steps we're going to take today. Today, you're going to generate ideas about the obstacles or challenges in your life. How do you do that? Well, now you have several different options. The bubble or web map that I showed you, the timeline that Miss Sinnott showed you, the list that my daughter Viola showed you, a drawing, or something else. Step 2, what are the obstacles or challenges show you about life? I try to identify and find a takeaway from that by jotting a short phrase next to each one. Step 3, free write. Write long in your writer's notebook. Write entry number 2 or on a separate sheet of paper or even in a Word document, however you feel most comfortable. And then step 4, upload your work into Schoology. That's it for now. Straight out of Mercer. Hope to see you all soon. Stay healthy. Wash those hands. Peace out.